Before talking about the term personality, it is important to keep in mind that individual differences are related to more than just the personality. Therefore, if we are talking about personality or the five-factor model in the following, we are not talking about an individual as a whole, but only about a part of it, as you can see in this figure. There are many definitions for the term personality. Still, most of them are similar as they have specific parts in common. Firstly, it can be stated that personality characterizes individuals. Secondly, most definitions refer to the dimensions of cognition, emotion, and behavior as parts of the personality. The following three definitions from Wikipedia, the American Psychological Association, and Costa and McRae can be seen as examples.
I'm talking now about the five-factor model of personality. The five-factor model, or short FFM, has been defined by McRae and Costa as an empirical generalization about the covariation of personality traits. The five factors are frequently labeled neuroticism, extraversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. The FFM is the most widely accepted solution of describing the trait structure, which means finding a simple and effective way to understand relations among traits. Each factor consists of 6 facets, which will be treated in detail later. This model is also known as the ocean model due to the initials of the factors, or Big Five model. Traits are described as more or less consistent and recurrent patterns of acting and reacting that simultaneously characterize individuals and differentiate them from others, and they also allow the discovery of empirical generalization about how others with similar traits are likely to act and react. The structure itself is genetically based. Now I'm talking about the history. The Big Five model grew from decades of research. The breakthrough, though, came from lexical researchers who argued that traits are so important in daily life that people will have invented names for all the important ones. The Americans Allport and Oddbird were able to extract a list with 18,000 adjectives in 1936 from the New International Dictionary, which were reduced to 4,505 stable individual character traits and then further processed by Kettle. He was able to categorize these traits into 16 personality factors in 1949. When advanced statistical methods were applicable by computer technology, Paul Costa and Robert McRae were able to provide empirical evidence in 1987 for the five-factor model, which had been discovered but not proven earlier by Ernest Tupes and Ray Crystal in 1961. Therefore, the widespread acceptance started in the 1990s due to the mentioned empirical evidence nearly 50 years after the foundation had been set. The FFM explicitly acknowledges 4 assumptions about human nature: its knowability, rationality, variability, and proactivity. Knowability refers to the assumption that personality is a proper object of scientific study. This stands in contrast to some humanistic and existential theories. Rationality is the assumption that people are generally capable of understanding themselves and others. In contrast, psychoanalysts hold that people are driven by unconscious forces and their self-understanding is fundamentally self-deception. Variability asserts that people differ from each other in psychologically significant ways. This sets trait theory apart from all those views of human nature, philosophical and psychological, that seek a single answer towards this question. Proactivity refers to the assumption that locus of causation of human actions is to be sought in the person. Therefore, personality is actively and interactively involved in shaping people's lives. Trait theory holds that it's worthwhile to seek the origins of behavior and characteristics of the person. Generally speaking, They cannot be seen as victims of their circumstances.
How to measure personality. From the Big Five Inventory BFI and the revised Neo-Personality Inventory, short Neo-PIR. After explaining the theory about the five-factor model, short FFM, the question appears how to make use of this theoretical framework. Therefore, it was Louis Goldberg in 1993 who developed one of the still most used inventories to measure the five factors of an individual by using a self-evaluation test. The test is known as the Big Five Inventory, short BFI. It consists of 44 items based on a 5-point Likert scale. The Likert scale allows every participant to answer the 44 items with 5 different given answers regarding the personal fit to each item. The scale varies from strongly disagree to disagree over neutral to agree and strongly agree. By evaluating all given answers, the participant then receives a result for each of the 5 factors, varying from 0 to 100 points. Using this particular way of measurement, the participant gets the possibility to analyze each factor based on the reached points. At this point, it is useful to underline that a high score not necessarily equals as a better result regarding a better personality than a low-scored one. It is more important to analyze each facet based on the reached score, to understand what characteristics on personality are related to that. The further analysis of each facet will be explained in detail in the chapter How to Interpret a Personality Test's Results. Exploring your own personality. A wide range of tests with a spread from 60 items up to 240 items and more can be found on the internet to be executed free of charge. The tests that we used during the class experiment can be found on the following website. So if you want to find out something about your personality, please click the link below. A critical point which has to be mentioned when executing personality tests is that the self-evaluation is always based on a subjective self-awareness. This leads to the consequence that the accuracy of the results regarding the participant's perception is always subjective as well. This means that any given feedback will people make to think that the individual result is true, because obviously it is the result of the perceptions that they made before doing the test, even if the results might be different or faked. This fact has been researched by Alfred Forer and underlines the phenomenon as the Forer effect or the Barnum effect. This effect describes the fact that people look for personal meaning in vague arguments when they are positive and general. Exploring each individual's personality, it has to be mentioned that 2/3 of the society show a medium-high rating at each factor. This is related to the fact that only few people have an extreme way of behaving related to one of the few characteristics. Only 5% of the society show an extreme high impact on each of the 5 factors. This has been approved by executing the test with 35 people during the presentation in the class. The results shown underline the statement with a total average of 64.3 points over all 5 factors.
Now in this part, we're going to talk about how to interpret the results of your personality test. So each personality test highlights the 5 main factors of the personality in order to generate an overall view of your characteristic and how to interpret them. The more precise are the tests, the more precise you can get assumption, and mostly you can also have some correlation between various factors that can be mixed together in order to be more precise. Another important part is also to know that a self-perception can be biased, so it's most of the time better to also have a peer perception, which means that someone is also evaluating your personality in order to compare results and to be, again, more precise. Another important aspect is the facet that already have been mentioned before. It means that for each factor, you can also have facets. That means that they are more precise, that explain your factor depending on some variables. They are all in their own scales, and it helps to understand in what kind of way you have a high or low score in, for instance, openness or agreeableness. Their role is also to give some deeper information and also to compare them better against and make some correlation. Now, considering a bit more about each factor, I'm going to explain what really means to have a high score or a low score. So the first one, openness to experience. A high scored person is considered as someone with a lot of creativity, curiosity, a sense of everyday life adventure, and also an interest in unusual ideas or person, means unconventional. A good example could be Albert Einstein, because of his eccentric ideas for his time. And if you are considered a low score in openness to experience, it means that you are more into traditional idea and conventional one, with less imagination, we can say, and also need of confirming. Now, considering conscientiousness, we can say that someone with a high score is considered as organized, self-discipline, kind of perfectionist in everyday task, and consciousness. It means that is a person who really need to be well organized and is kind of appreciated in scholar things or working place. A good example could be Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. And if you have a low score in this factor, it means that you're more inclined to less organization, you avoid kind of decision making, in sort of imprecise in everyday task, and can take some impulsive decision. Now, talking about extroversion, a person who's considered as extrovert is someone who feels positively about herself, kind of confident about leading and take some positions. He enjoys social interaction and experiment positive feelings. And a good example that we can have is Barack Obama, the former president of the United States. And at the opposite, a non-extrovert person would be someone who consider herself as unpopular, kind of reserved also, would try to avoid as much as possible social interaction, and also kind of submissive. And again, an example could be Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. Now, if we talk about agreeableness, also a high score could be someone indulgent, who also is forgiving, kind of empathic and moderate in his idea and way of impose them to others. A good example could be Snow White, and at the opposite, someone with a low score in agreeableness could be considered as more critical, grudge, suspicious and aggressive if someone is not aligned with his ideas. For the last of the 5 factor is neuroticism. For this factor, the scale is kind of inversed, which means that if you got a low score, it means that you are not that neuroticism, and with a better even temper, self-satisfied about yourself, calm and stress dealing with events, and also that you are more into controlling your emotions. With a high score, you consider as negatively emotional, with a feeling of insecurity, kind of blue or moody, and also with a lot of worries and anxious statement. So now that you are able to understand your personality test results, it is important to highlight the fact that this is just a starting point for self-development. Personality is only a small part of human being, and it's not something completely unchangeable, which means that even if personality is supposed to be stable since adulthood and kind of inherent for 50%, you can still work on some aspect of your personality if you consider that you don't have a good score enough, or if you think that it can help you to be maybe more into agreeableness, be more warm, for instance. So it's a good element for personal development for starting, and to choose the objective by, for instance, the SMART method that help you to set goals for the future. So as a conclusion, I will talk also about the risk about personality tests. Mostly when you only do a self-evaluation and not compare with a peer one, is that sometimes you can have what we call positive distortion. That means that you are faking good. So you are trying to show yourself in a better light than you really are. We can consider two of this positive distortion. The first one is the undeliberate one, which means that it's a kind of unconscious way of faking good, because you maybe don't know yourself correctly. You think that you are maybe better in some factors like openness or something, so you kind of give wrong answer without knowing that they're wrong, or because you don't understand items and it comes from a lack of knowledge. The second positive distortion can be deliberate. It means that you know that you are faking because you need to fit maybe in a hiring environment and with some criteria that you already know maybe that you don't have enough and could be a disadvantage for you as a candidate for the post. So just for concluding this, as we can see, so personality tests are really important just for know yourself and be a bit more confident about where you really are and what you can offer to, for instance, a company. But it's not something that you can only base everything, and you can still improve if you're not satisfied at 100%.
After having explained a lot about the Big Five in general and how they can be interpreted, there are many studies that try to find out how the Big Five are related to leadership skills. To find out whether they come to the same conclusion and what might be the differences between the studies, it is necessary to compare them. Therefore, we presented 3 studies in which the scientists have had different approaches to measure the relation between Big Five and leadership. In a study by Judge et al., leadership performance was measured as a combination of the 2 criteria of leadership emergence and leadership effectiveness. The authors of the study then found out that there are linkages between the Big Five and the leadership performance. Namely, there is a medium correlation of leadership performance with extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness. Additionally, there is a medium negative correlation with neuroticism. The authors did not find a correlation between leadership performance and agreeableness. Another interesting study is provided by Winkelmann and Winkelmann. The goal of it was to analyze if the occupation is moderating the effect of the Big Five on life satisfaction, meaning if your personality makes you happier in specific jobs. You can see the results of their study on the next slide. From an economical perspective, the manager seems to be the most important occupation in this study, so that there was a focus on it. The authors found out that if you are high on emotional stability, conscientiousness, and extroversion, there is a great influence on your life satisfaction. On the opposite, it does not seem to be important if you are high on openness or agreeableness. Let's conclude with a short summary on how to understand other people's behavior. First, personality tests can only help to give a brief tendency of a person's personality. Second, we found out that the subjective rating should always be compared with an objective peer rating. Third, traits do not give an explanation about people's behavior and its reasons, as it always depends on the external environment. Fourth, culture from each country, but also the age or the gender, can have an impact on the 5-factor model. Fifth, distortion can impact the reliability of test scores.